Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories. The moment the thought crossed her mind, Madelyn hurriedly stood up and excused herself from the table. "I'll be right back," she said. Her friend, left behind, lamented her sudden departure. Meanwhile, Ian was silently watching her from afar. No sooner had Madelyn left the banquet than she called out, "Miss Isabel." When Isabel turned back, her eyes were already brimming with tears. "I'm sorry, but I have to go," Isabel said. Madelyn stopped her. "Please, wait a moment. Are you going to meet your lover?" Isabel froze in place. "What? Have you been eavesdropping on our conversation?" she asked, startled. Madelyn shook her head. "No, it's not like that. Don't pretend otherwise. Women like you are just another victim of my brother's type. Do you think by doing this, he'll notice you?" Madelyn's voice grew louder. "You're going to meet Sir Milif, aren't you?" Isabel's steps faltered, and her demeanor softened. How do you know him?" Isabel asked, her voice trembling. "Don't worry," Madelyn reassured her. "I won't tell anyone. I don't even understand what socialism is." Isabel, still skeptical, asked, "Aren't you a spy for your brother?" "Of course not," Madelyn replied calmly. "Sir Nottingham is polite but stubborn." At the mention of her brother, Isabel retorted angrily, I don't see any politeness in him." Madelyn continued, "And he's very good at controlling others." Isabel, now somewhat embarrassed, but still frowning, remarked, "You seem to know him well." Madelyn responded gently, "I've been through this before, Isabel. Don't let his stubbornness and controlling nature affect you. I was once trapped by a man like that, and my whole life was ruined. I even fled from his wrath." Madelyn recounted her past without fear of being drawn back into Ian's world. Her only desire was to save this girl, who was blinded by anger, leading her to a tragic end. Isabel reminded her so much of the old Madelyn. "It may seem hopeless now, but it's not. There are many other paths you haven't tried yet." Madelyn's heartfelt words seemed to touch Isabel deeply. Isabel, confused, pleaded for Madelyn to release her hand. In that moment, the two girls failed to notice a shadow approaching them. It was none other than Ian. Only then did they realize he had been watching them, their hands still clasped together. Ian frowned in suspicion. "This is a matter between me and my sister, so please." Before he could finish, Isabel interrupted, shouting, "That's not true." She suddenly turned and asked, "What was your name again?" Madelyn blinked, answering unconsciously. "Madelyn," Isabel shouted even louder. "I'm staying with Lady Renfield." Ian was growing increasingly frustrated with his sister's outbursts. "You're acting overly familiar with a lady you've just met," he reprimanded. Isabel, now even more irritated, shot back, "We're having a conversation. Don't butt in." Ian, at a loss for words, became more agitated as he realized his usually stubborn sister was getting along with Lady Madelyn better than he ever had. Sighing deeply, he warned, "Remember, every action has consequences." Then, addressing both Isabel and Lady Renfield, he added, "I don't know how you've come to know my sister, but meddling in someone else's family matters is never a good idea." Both women were left speechless. Isabel, however, muttered under her breath, "Who does he think he is? My father, maybe?" Madelyn, on the other hand, stood frozen, anger welling up inside her. "I knew it," she thought. "He didn't even thank me for stopping his sister." The next morning, Madelyn unfolded the newspaper. Around this time in her previous life, every headline was about Isabel's death. But today, there was nothing. Madelyn silently thanked the heavens as she leaned back, reflecting, "In my past life, no one stopped Isabel." Madelyn recalled the last time Ian had seen his sister, storming through her door after hearing the piano coming from Isabel's room. She had witnessed the tears Ian had tried so hard to hold back but couldn't. So that's why, she thought, remembering how shortly after, Ian had gifted her a piano. Perhaps it was his way of apologizing, but that didn't matter anymore. Now, she had other things to focus on, like the upcoming social gathering at the estate of the Khan family. As Madelyn scanned the guest list, wondering if Ian would be attending, she felt a sudden tap on her shoulder. "Lady Madelyn Renfield," said a familiar voice. It was the same gentleman from the other night, his interest in her apparent. Reluctantly, she joined him. At least with Ian absent, she could enjoy a conversation with the other gentleman more freely. Might as well, she thought. The man, as smooth-talking as ever, led her to a private seat. "Ah, Lady Renfield, have you ever visited the city before? It's incredibly modern and truly magnificent. I think it would suit someone like you perfectly. Madelyn nodded politely, though her thoughts were elsewhere. He's trying to impress me, but I know that the city he's boasting about will soon be torn apart by war. The man was about to hand her the drink when someone suddenly snatched it away. I didn't even realize, he exclaimed. Do you really think that, Ian? Ian, arriving later than expected, replied with a playful tone. You're late. The man called out to him. Nearby, a couple was whispering to each other. Oh my, isn't that the Nottingham family? Yes, Lord George is a classmate of Lord Nottingham, one of them confirmed. Meanwhile, Madelyn could hardly believe that Ian had shown up today, and trailing behind him was his younger brother, Eric. Isabel was also there, seated directly across from her. The moment Isabel spotted Madelyn, she instantly became guarded. Eric, cheerful as ever, chimed in. I don't believe humanity will continue to develop in peace. Ian added, humans are selfish creatures by nature. We are driven by competition and destruction. Ironically, that's what has fueled our progress throughout history. So you're saying military power leads to this development? Someone asked. Well, reforms often come with violence, Ian replied. Everyone was so absorbed in the discussion that no one noticed Isabel had slipped away. George, in good spirits, joined in. But do you really think there will be a war soon? The world has never seen such parallel growth in both economy and development. Oh, I disagree, Ian said firmly. If necessary, another war will break out. Madelyn looked at him with concern. Sensing her gaze, Ian turned to her and asked, Lady Renfield, what do you think of all this? Startled, Madelyn looked at him with a complex expression before speaking. About the development of humanity? Well, I do agree that military forces often drive innovation. But even if that's true, can one truly justify the deaths and suffering that people must endure in the name of progress? Ian, unfazed, replied, You make a fair point, Lady Renfield. But because some believe that force is necessary for progress, wars have always broken out. A heavy silence enveloped the two of them. Ian then smiled faintly. I see. So, that's your perspective, Lady Renfield. Madelyn, confused, glanced around and noticed that everyone was staring at her as if she were an oddity. She felt out of place among the group of men. The atmosphere was unbearably heavy. Did I speak too bluntly? She wondered. Eric broke the silence with a laugh. I don't think I can keep up with all this political talk anymore. Oh, by the way, is anyone going to see the Winbowen tennis tournament this year? George eagerly joined in, shifting the conversation. Madelyn, feeling utterly out of place, quietly excused herself while everyone else continued their lively discussion. Unbeknownst to her, Ian had been observing her every move, watching her retreating figure as she walked towards the door. He smiled, seemingly satisfied. Outside, Madelyn found herself questioning her conscience. Did I really need to oppose Ian so directly? She thought, but strangely enough, he hadn't seemed upset, quite the opposite. In fact, he appeared amused by it all. Suddenly, Madelyn spotted Isabel with another man. She immediately recognized him as the one in the photograph with her. That must be her lover, Madelyn mumbled, watching them. They look so happy together. And she's even willing to die for him. I wish I could have such romantic experiences. Lady Renfield? A familiar voice called her name. It was Lord Nottingham. Ian, he spoke up. May I have a word with you? Madelyn hesitated. If he came any closer, he would surely spot Isabel. In a split second, she ran over to Ian. Taken aback, Ian instinctively blushed and cleared his throat. I've been wanting to talk about what happened last time, he began. Last time? Madelyn repeated. You mean about Isabel? Yes, Ian admitted. I may have been too harsh on you. Madelyn stole a glance at the couple nearby and quickly responded. No, it's fine. I understand you're just concerned about her. She stepped aside, feeling the urgency to move away. He'll see Isabel if I don't get him out of here, she thought. Shall we head back inside? She suggested. Noticing her odd behavior, Ian hesitated before speaking again. You confuse me, Lady Renfield. Lately, your coldness towards me has only drawn more of my attention. Madelyn felt both annoyed and flustered by his words. Do you think I look down on you? She asked. I don't know, Ian replied, clenching his hands. Maybe I'm just imagining things. But I do hope your disdain doesn't go beyond that. It wouldn't be good for our relationship. You never know what the future holds for us, do you? As the sun began to set, Ian continued, "It's getting colder. We should head inside." Madelyn responded quickly, "You just said we don't know what the future holds, like it's going to be something terrible." "Take your time, Ian. I'd like to enjoy the scenery a little longer." Ian sighed. "You really don't want to open up to me, do you? Very well. I'll respect your wishes for today, but I don't plan on giving up." Madelyn stood frozen, staring after him. At that moment, her thoughts wandered to the couple passionately together in the garden. If I were to compare our ill-fated connection to their fiery love, it would be laughable. Ian, someone who longs to be loved. They would surely laugh at him until they fell over. The man standing in front of her seemed like a shield against the wind. His shadow completely enveloped her. "I can't let him give me hope," she thought. Madelyn recalled how, in her previous life, at the age of 25, she had often wondered how long she would live like this, perhaps until she died. But then she thought about Corey, the dog. "No one would care for him if I were gone," she thought. "I can't entertain such dark thoughts." On the contrary, if Corey were to die, she wondered how long she would have to endure living in this hellish place. Madelyn was in her own house, yet she was far from happy. It felt as though she were a prisoner, sentenced to life. Suddenly, she stood up, startling Corey. The little dog looked at her with wide eyes, not understanding what his owner was about to do. "Don't worry, my sweet Corey. You have nothing to fear," she whispered, reassuring him. The next morning, at the Nottingham estate, Ian had to pause his work upon hearing some unexpected news. What did you just say? What about my wife?" he demanded. The butler, visibly uneasy, stammered, "My lord, the lady, she left the estate last night." At a movie theater in London, Madelyn sat alone in a row of seats, enjoying the story on the screen. She had managed to escape that house. Her heart leaped with excitement, but she couldn't help but wonder how the servants were reacting. And what about Ian? How would he take it? Would he be relieved she was gone, or saddened by her absence? Madelyn looked back at the screen to watch the rest of the film, titled The Kid, a silent drama featuring Charlie Chaplin, telling the story of a man who raised a child abandoned by his mother, treating him like his own son. Madelyn was moved. That boy isn't even his son. How could he do so much for him? They aren't even related by blood, yet they've become a family. Tears welled up in her eyes as she watched Chaplin kiss the child and cradle him like his most precious treasure. Everyone in the theater, including Madelyn, was overcome with emotion. Returning to her rented house in London, she was greeted by her dog, who ran to her excitedly. She prepared some food for Corey and recounted the interesting moments from the film she had just seen. It was pure bliss, just the two of them, master and pet, free and unbound. But living independently for someone who had been accustomed to the luxuries of an estate wasn't easy. "Where will I buy food for Corey?" she wondered. "And how will I wash this dirty dress?" Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "Madam, a letter has arrived for you," said a voice from outside. Madelyn trembled as she took the letter. It had barely been a day since she left the estate, and yet someone already knew where she was. Nervously, she opened it and read the short message. "I'll wait for you at the train station. Ian Nottingham." Just a few words, but they were enough to shatter the fragile sense of freedom she had built. "I thought everything would end once I ran away to London, but I was wrong." And yet, why did she feel a strange sense of relief? Back in the present, Madelyn gazed absent-mindedly at the people dancing in the room. Sleepy and wistful, she mused, is there really no way to live freely without the burden of inheritance or marriage? She sighed to herself. I should have memorized the top 10 stocks to invest in before I died. What a fool I am, more of a fool than a noble woman. Madelyn, lost in her thoughts, slumped forward, but a hand caught her forehead. It was Ian. Madelyn instantly woke up, startled. "Oh, Lord Nottingham," she exclaimed. Ian spoke softly. "You seem tired these past few days. Perhaps the London air doesn't suit you." Madelyn replied, "The air in London is awful, but mostly it's because I've been staying up late to study." Ian looked surprised. "Studying? What are you learning? Ancient Greek?" Madelyn recalled her late nights battling through books and sighed. "Well, something close to that. I've been trying to figure out how to overcome an inevitable fate." Ian appeared puzzled, which made Madelyn feel embarrassed. "In short, I'm just trying to figure out how to endure it." Ian pondered this for a moment. That's not the sort of thing a noble lady should be worrying about, Lady Renfield. My father used to enjoy spending time in London for leisure, after all. Realizing something, Ian quickly apologized. Oh, I didn't mean to make light of your situation. Don't worry, my lord, Madelyn reassured him. I'm simply preparing for the worst-case scenario. Ian offered some advice. You should consider having someone else handle this for you, rather than bearing it all yourself. Be more practical. Madelyn gave a faint smile. I think most people would do just that. She paused and then looked down, her expression growing sadder. But I want to live without depending on anyone. Have you ever hated yourself so much that you started to despise others? Ian, taken aback, stared at her with a puzzled expression. Why would I hate myself? He asked. Madelyn suddenly realized how ridiculous her words sounded, and she burst into laughter. Ian, witnessing the range of her emotions, blushed slightly as her laughter filled the room. I apologize, she said between laughs. I must seem terribly rude. Ian cleared his throat and turned his face away. Not at all, Madelyn observed. Your confidence is quite surprising, my lord. As they were conversing, the door to the room suddenly flew open, and George, the dark-skinned gentleman, rushed in with alarming news. Lady Renfield, I mean, Madelyn, I deeply apologize, but Lord Renfield, your father, he's gone bankrupt. Madelyn's face paled as memories from her past life flooded back. Just like before, her father had thrown all his money into risky ventures and lost everything. The entire family fortune was gone. Madelyn hurried back to her family's estate, consumed with overwhelming worry. Where's my father? She demanded, her voice trembling. The maid, equally shaken, replied, my lady, he's in his room. He's been there since noon. But he ordered that no one should enter. Madelyn's face turned deathly pale. No, it can't be. Father, please, no, she cried out as she burst through the door, calling for him. Father, but there he was, sitting right in front of her, alive and well, his eyes wide with surprise at her sudden entrance. The maid, still panting from the earlier commotion, added, except for the butler, my lady. As the butler and maid left the room, Madelyn's father, clearly bewildered by his daughter's dramatic entrance, frowned. You're causing such a fuss, Madelyn. Not very ladylike at all, he scolded. Ignoring his remark, Madelyn confronted him directly. Father, what is this about bankruptcy? You told me you'd burn those contracts. Her father froze, his expression changing in an instant. Tears welled up in his eyes as he adopted a pitiful, fragile demeanor, trying to win his daughter's sympathy. It's all my fault, he sobbed. The company I invested in has gone bankrupt. I put everything we had into it. He suddenly grabbed her hand, and as he did, it was as if stars shimmered around him. Madelyn, you're my only hope now. Madelyn sighed, relieved at least that her father was unharmed. At least he's safe. I can help him in this life, she thought. She gently reassured him. Don't worry, father. You're still here, and we'll get through this. First, let's sell the estate and the townhouse. Then we can work to pay off the rest of the debts. But before she could finish, her father's expression turned arrogant. Nonsense. How could a nobleman like me work for a living? Madelyn couldn't believe what she was hearing. What did you just say? She asked, incredulous. Her father continued, I've heard that Lord Nottingham is quite taken with you. She grew irritated. We've only danced a few times. Her father, refusing to back down, yelled, That's exactly what I'm saying. Do you see him showing interest in any other woman? If he didn't like you, I wouldn't have said anything so bluntly. Don't you get it? If it's not him, there are dozens of other gentlemen out there. So, stop these foolish thoughts of yours and find yourself a suitable husband. And that's how Madelyn found herself once again at yet another social event. She was utterly disheartened, as it was becoming increasingly clear that her father was determined for her to marry into wealth. Selling the estate and the townhouse would likely be better, but she hadn't yet figured out what the two of them would do afterward. Lost in thought, someone approached her. You're Lady Renfield, aren't you? Madelyn responded, Lord Peril. The man staggered slightly, hiccuping as he continued. I'm so glad you've attended the party. May I have the honor of a dance with you? Politely, Madelyn declined. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well at the moment. Perhaps another time. At her refusal, his expression immediately turned sour. I've heard your family's fortune has been wiped out, but since you're still around, I suppose Lord Renfield doesn't have much to worry about. does he? He continued, with a sickening tone. 17, eh? Such a ripe age, so full of energy. I'm sure there's a long line of gentlemen eager to save you from your predicament. I suppose I'm not high enough on that list, though. Madelyn trembled with anger, but restrained herself, letting the moment pass. She thanked him for his offer and was about to walk away when suddenly, Ian appeared beside her. Care to play some music for me? Ian asked. Madelyn was taken aback. Earl of Nottingham? Ian continued. There's something buzzing in my ear, a noise I can't quite ignore. Must be the sound of some foolish old goat who can't tell the difference between decency and vulgarity. Lord Peril, his face turning pale with embarrassment, immediately scurried off to arrange the music. George, witnessing the exchange, remarked, "You're going too far, Ian." That was the host. Did you really have to interfere like that? Ian, still calm, replied, I just deal with things that annoy me. George was taken aback by his friend's uncharacteristic behavior. Since when do you care so much about Lady Renfield? He asked, puzzled. Before Ian could respond, someone grabbed Madelyn's arm. There you are, over there. They've just opened a gown exhibition. Let's go take a look, Isabel said, leading her away. Ian watched his sister whisk Madelyn off and gave Isabel a confused, hostile glare as they departed. Huh, Ian's giving me death glares, Isabel remarked. But I'm still wondering, are you sure you're not some kind of supernatural force? Can you see the future or predict death? Isabel asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Madelyn shook her head. No, I'm not like that. Isabel looked at her doubtfully. Do you have any idea how mysterious you are? You not only know the name of the man I love, but also seem to know what I'm planning to do next. Madelyn, direct as ever, asked, So you're really planning to die? Isabel yelled back. I just wanted to sneak out and have some fun. I was a little tipsy, you know. You must realize how foolish that was, right? Madelyn replied, Of course. You don't think I understand that already? Isabel looked at her in surprise. I always thought you seemed so serious and proper, but maybe I was wrong. Madelyn sighed. I don't need to maintain that image in this life. Isabel giggled. You remind me of someone I used to know. Who? Madelyn asked, blinking in curiosity. An old friend, Isabel said, smiling. I think we could be good friends too. Madelyn remained quiet for a moment. An old friend? Why do you say that? Because I feel a connection with you. That's all. No hidden agenda. Oh, and my brother mentioned he'd like to invite you to our estate, Isabel added casually. Madelyn's breath caught. I thought this life would be different, but it seems like the waves of fate are about to crash over me just like they did in the past. Will Madelyn be able to change her fate? Or will she follow the same path already set in her previous life? Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow the next episode of the Manhwa Nottingham.